Gerry, you were one of the early artists that we signed to Blue Élan Records, and it was always a thrill for me when you decided to join us with the albums. And we've been privileged to release a couple of your albums. Today, what I wanted to chat with you about is your new upcoming album, a retrospective best of 20 songs, and there's 5 unreleased tracks on there. But this was a selection that you made. So could you tell me a little bit about how you went about picking the 20 songs for this record?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic because in a sense you're editing yourself, and I have always deferred to the ears that I trust around me and stuff. And as you probably know, Kirk, I write a lot. And so I had on occasion just deferred to people about which ones do you like and stuff. And that only works to a certain extent. And in this case, I thought, no, wait a minute. Don't I have an opinion at all about some of these? So as you know, I called in some friendly ears to, but the final decision was my own. And it's an interesting process because we're looking at a lot of years here. This isn't like a regular album project where it might be the last year or two of what you've been writing and stuff. So it was really interesting to address it as a, let's look at this as an overall scope, as opposed to a snapshot of time.
But, one of the things I noticed is I love the various album titles that you came up with, but 3 a.m. and Crying, 2 of my favorite songs in the world, actually, were from the Horizontal Fall album. And when I first saw that album, I remembered the history of this band that you might be affiliated with that had a bunch of albums titles that started with H. And did that play a role in that name, or how did Horizontal Fall come about?
Well, it was always a nice sign. It wasn't a target that I was looking for, and of course with my partner Dewey, we've named a lot with H titles. But in this case, it actually came from a quote of Jean Cocteau, who is the kind of French Renaissance dude that I'm a big fan of. It's such a lovely arc of his life. But there was a quote saying something like, and of course it's a translation, but it was something like, life is like falling horizontally. And basically what he's saying is the inertia of life moves you forward and stuff. So you're kind of falling all the time, but it's in a horizontal direction, not over a cliff. And I just twisted it to Horizontal Fall, and then I thought, I really like that. I wish it was mine, but that was where it came from.
And I think back and I look at some of these things, like your title, Van Gogh. Where did that one come from?
I had an early art education as I was growing up, and I was so blessed. We grew up in the Air Force and traveled every few years, as families like that do. But my mom, who we just lost last year at 96, lovely long life, was a fanatic of the arts. And so she exposed me to classical music at my earliest memories of listening. But also at the same time, or a bit later, by 8, I remember her, leafing through books by Joseph Albers and Rothko and things like this. And at the time, your mom's showing you and you go, far out. There was really no judgment. It was just an education. So I had this kind of Van Gogh, if you did Dutch, whatever, and Gauguin, the story. But those 2 guys in particular had quite an interesting dynamic between the 2 of them. And it's been written up many ways and in slightly different takes on the relationship. But it was just a combination of those 2 names, and it was a reference to the artistic process.